It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I am your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, I am joined by my line mates, Evan Sabourin and Devin Little. Evan, how's it going? Another week in the books, couple wins for the Red Wings, and a loss we'll talk about. But how's it going?
Oh, there's the elephant in the room. Yeah, good week. The games are good. Like I said, I'm very happy that we're recording tonight instead of last night. Like I said, I think we could have had some a little more anger issues last night, but to have a full day to process and analyze, I'm feeling a little bit better. So the holidays are almost here. It's we're jamming Christmas music already, so things are good.
Yeah, Christmas is surprisingly around the corner. I feel 2023 has just gone way too fast for me, but it's been too quick. Devin, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Like Evan said, probably for the best that we're recording tonight instead of last night, and the episode is dropping 2 nights after that game instead of the following morning, because emotions would be raw, and we've obviously had time to digest and put our thoughts together. That's probably for the best, right?
For sure. I think it'll be a lot of emotion.
I would like to say to our listeners, I highly recommend not watching a Red Wings game on your phone while driving, while the Wings have a more than a 2-goal lead, because I did that last night and it's not safe. It's not. So
just like 4-goal leads in Detroit, it is not safe.
I got a 3-year-old, so I'm always watching the game on my phone because Coco Melon never stops playing at my house. So I'm constantly on my phone, and now when I'm driving and I got to do something, because with the West Coast time, these games start at 4, so I'm coming home from when I'm watching. I'm like, so don't watch the Red Wings and drive, people.
Good advice. All right. Well, before we get into the show here, I got to remind you of our Substack that we've got here at the Hockey Writers. A bit of a change in its format, but you're still getting your free version every about maybe 2-3 times a week with all the best articles from the Red Wings. And we also have a premium option, which gets you access to all content at the Hockey Writers Substack, which not just the Red Wings, you'll get access to all the teams, prospects, hockey history, and everything for one low price. So check that out. That's a new thing we dropped this past week. So there's a link in the description. So just check it out. It's a lot of fun. All right. Well, let's get into the show here and our one good, one bad. And I'm sure there's a lot we can do for bad, but I'll start with you, Evan. What's a good and a bad from this past week?
Well, the good for me is, we're an offensive juggernaut all of a sudden. Coming into this season, the biggest concern was goal scoring. Well, if you would have told me that 17 out of the 25 games that we played this year, we've scored 4 more goals. And I believe we're averaging 3.84 goals per game, which is second only to the Kings, and we have 2 games in hand on them. So it's pretty amazing where the Red Wings are at. A lot of expectations, but they're starting to rise. So I'm really baffled by the offensive output. My bad, I can sum it up in 3 words, and it basically refers to last night. Odd man rush. The Red Wings had a big problem with that last night, and I know we'll get into that later in the show, but something's got to happen there, because you can't give up. And I'll count it as 3 shorthanded goals on that one power play. And I can't remember the last time I saw that. I can't remember the last time I saw 2 shorthanded goals on a power play.
Let alone,
yeah, right? So, we'll get into that, Devin.
Yeah, that was a tough game. To digest for sure. Devin, a good and a bad.
So it's kind of funny because, very much some sour grapes going on, to start this episode. and you would think that like this whole week was just awful because of it. But since our last episode, the Red Wings actually got 5 points out of 5 out of 6 points. So
Yeah.
like that's pretty good. If we're this sour, that means that we're basically nitpicking at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Um, which that definitely wasn't the case last season, right? We weren't in a position to nitpick. So if the Red Wings are getting 5 out of 6 points and we're still like, oh, that's the sign that they're making progress, right? And then my one bad, honestly, I'm just gonna kind of all encompass this and just say defense. Whether it's the goaltending, the guys on the blue line, pretty much everything that happens in the Red Wings zone is just bad right now. Like Evan said, it's the Red Wings are all of a sudden an offensive juggernaut, and that's great. But they have to be, otherwise they wouldn't be winning these games because they keep letting they're letting in 4 goals, 3 goals,
Yeah.
6 goals. That's not not a recipe for success, and it's honestly a little baffling because pretty much since the turn of the decade, when Jeff Blashill was still coached, this team had to play defense first, low event hockey in order to have a chance to win. This team knows what it means to have to lock things down and not give up too much. And now they have all this firepower in the world, and apparently they forgot what it means to play defense. It's baffling to me, honestly. You would think that you kind of learned your lessons a couple years ago, and you kind of carry that with you into the good days, but I guess not. I guess Lalone still has some work to do when it comes to helping this team out in the defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the last 3 games, they have scored 15 goals, but have also given up about the same. So I mean, they've allowed 4 to the Canadians, 3 to the Sabres, and then 6 to the Sharks, the worst team in the league. But it is baffling on how bad they are defensively and the goaltending, which we'll get into next. But my good is that Patrick Kane looked really good in his first game with the Red Wings. Almost scored. He hit the post, I believe, on one of his chances, and almost got his first assist as well. So, I mean, he had a good debut. I mean, he could have had a couple points in that game, but ended up getting nothing. But it's good. He looked good, and that's something we talked about in the last episode. If he was going to look, I mean, this is his first game, so it's good they got some chances, and we'll see what he can do. Still looks kind of weird in a Red Wings jersey, though. After being so like, I saw him, I'm like, there's something wrong with this picture. You're used to. He looked weird in a Rangers jersey too. I mean, it just seems like because he's with the Blackhawks for so long, you're so used to it. But that's my good, is that Kane looked good. My bad, I'm just going to echo both you guys. Defense and goaltending. I mean, it's got to be better. I mean, it's just, you can't be giving up this many goals. Yes, they're scoring a lot, but that's not sustainable. I mean, you can't be thinking you're going to win games 5-4 all the time, because you're going to have to win those 2-1 games, 1-0 games sometimes. And it just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do that. If they can't score 3 or more, it seems like they lose games. So yeah, that's just not something you want to keep continuing throughout the season, to be a playoff team and stay a playoff team, because it's just not going to be able to keep going on that. All right, on that note, let's talk about the goaltending and Ville Husso in particular. We've talked about him quite a bit over the last, I think we've mentioned his name almost every episode so far, and it's not in a good way most of the time. Actually, I don't think we talked about it in a good way yet. He's struggled. He allowed the 6 goals. I believe he was in all game, right? Allowed all 6 yesterday and didn't look good doing it. We'll start with you, Devin. How would you handle Husso right now? I mean, Lalonde or Yzerman, because there's ways you can go each way to do it. Looking in Edmonton, what they did to Jack Campbell, they sent him down to the minors. What would you do if you were Lalonde or Yzerman in this case? Because something has to be done. I don't know if you can keep starting him if you keep struggling like this.
As far as I'm concerned, at least right now, I think they should be playing Alex Lyon until he gives them a reason not to. And as for Husso, and they still have James Reimer there too, right? You kind of just, you pick a name out of a hat, whoever they pick, that's who's backup, I guess. I think Husso needs needs a little bit of a sabbatical, honestly. I don't know if he needs to, take unplug and refresh, or I don't know if he needs to spend some time with his newborn or whatever. But I can tell you where he doesn't need to be spending time, and that is the Red Wings net. Not good enough, quite frankly. And don't get me wrong, his numbers and his results are a little deceiving. The defense in front of him is, doesn't do him a lot of favors often. Evan, you mentioned the odd man rushes. There's nothing Husso can do about that except for stop it, hopefully. And even then, he's not doing that. But the way I look at it, whether it's Husso's fault or the defense in front of him or both simultaneously, this team is not at its best when Husso's in net. They just play better. They play, for whatever reason, they play better with Lyon in net. And you could even argue they play better with Reimer in net. So whether it's Husso's fault or not, he's not giving the Red Wings the best chance to win, and that means he should not be playing. I think that they still have a lot of vested interest in making sure that he gets kind of rounds back into form. Still has another year left on his contract at $4.75 million. So for the sake of not having that Jack Campbell situation where he's making millions of dollars to be in the AHL, you definitely hope he rounds into form. But for the time being, give him some time off. He hasn't done anything to earn the next start, and he hasn't done anything for a while now. Alex Lyon has. Let him start, and once Lyon slips up, then maybe you turn back to Husso.
Yeah, his stats aren't good at all. 886 save percentage, 3.65 goals against average. And if you look at the advanced stats, 4 really bad starts, only 5 quality starts. Yeah, it's not good. He's got a winning record. I mean, that's the only good stat on his board right now. But that's because the Red Wings are just outscoring teams to offset it when he's in net. So yeah, it's not good at all. Evan, what do you think? What do you do with Husso?
Well, my response is kind of similar to what Devin is saying. The third period last night, I would have rather had a shirtless Chris Osgood been pulled out of the booth and thrown into the net. But it goes back to, here's my point I want to make. There's always going to be a scapegoat with this team. There's always going to be a scapegoat. And growing up in Detroit in the 80s and 90s, I'm aging myself here, there was the 2 biggest scapegoats on the Detroit sports scene were always the Lions quarterback and the Red Wings goalie. And if you're a diehard Detroit sports fan, you know that. So having said that, I think a lot of people nowadays on social media or whatever, and we're talking about Husso and underlying numbers and all that. I think a lot of people are looking at the box score and saying, this guy's awful, terrible, blah, blah, blah. Send him down, send him off, trade him, whatever. But you got to understand last night, San Jose, the worst team in the league, put up 40 shots on goal on this Red Wings team. Now, I picked this off the Wing Wheel podcast the other day. They had a sit down with Ken Daniels. And one of the things he mentioned is, Ville Husso, that was his 14th straight game at Little Caesars Arena of allowing 3 or more goals. So it's a combination of both. And last night, the odd man rushes, yeah, he was hung out to dry. But here's the thing. With a goaltender like in the situation what the Red Wings are, we're contending for a playoff spot, you need a goalie that can make some big saves at points in the game. Now, granted, like I said, the odd man rushes, but there's just nothing there. 6 goals to the worst team in hockey. He's lost his confidence, and I think I don't think we're going to see him play until the new year. I think last night was a real big eye opener for the Wings. I expect to see Lions already scheduled to start tomorrow. Maybe they throw in Reimer too. This guy needs some time because he's not mentally right. I actually thought he played a decent first period, but the San Jose was buzzing last night. And the other part of this conversation we can have too is, where's the 60-minute play? This team is the last 3 games. I mean, come on. Yesterday I was watching the game while I was driving my car. And, and I'm doing the gritty in my car. I'm singing the Eminem goal song, which I love the Eminem goal song, by I do love that. It's way better than that stupid Blackhawks goal song they have that drives me insane. But how we're up 4-0. This game's over. I don't need to watch it in my car. I did it anyway. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. Just back 3 goals on 1 power play. It's unbelievable. But again, how are you allowing odd man rushes on your own power play?
Yeah.
So something's got to give here. I don't know. The word that Derek Lalonde used in his press conference was that the Wings are playing too casual. And you can see it on the ice. You're up 4-0 and you let that happen. There's something going on there. And I really hope someone stepped up in the locker room last night and really said something, because games like that, I was trying to think today, I can't think of a Red Wings game in the past decade where I was that disappointed in the outcome, because you don't blow a 4-goal lead. It's unbelievable to me. So defensively, yeah, they got to figure something out. And the other thing I noticed too, and maybe you guys saw this, there was a lot of blown tires on defense last night. And do we got to call Paul Boyer and have him get a skate sharpener or something? Because Sider blew a tire on one of the shorthanded goals. Larkin blew a tire in overtime. What's going on there? I don't know. So those are my thoughts. I'm just rambling.
No, all true. And when a team has a 4-0 lead, that should be game over. I mean, yes, there's been a lot of comebacks in the NHL lately. Not just this season, last season. Seems like no lead is safe anymore. The Canucks had a 5-2. They were down 5-2 and they came back and tied it just the other day too, in the one period. So it's it seems like these multi-goal leads aren't as safe as they used to be. Teams can just lock it down, but it should be a win most of the time when you have a 4-0 lead.
And just real quick too, what's even more infuriating about it is the previous game against the Sabres, they had a 4-0 lead and then they almost coughed it up. Yeah. The Sabres drew within 1 and then Larkin put it away with an empty netter. So then when they go up 4 goals against the Sharks, you would think that they would be like, all right, guys, we were in this spot 2 nights ago and we almost blew it. Let's not do it again. And they full on blew it. They didn't get an empty netter to seal the win. No, they lost in overtime.
And they did it against Montreal too.
Exactly. This is all.
What do we?
It's all recent enough to where they should be able to be like, all right, we did this 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
Let's do it the right way. It's frustrating beyond all belief.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
What's crazy is that it was done in one period. The Red Wings lead in the second period.
They almost broke the record for most goals scored by 1 second. By teams. It was just everywhere you looked, it was
insane. They got a point. It's
the most frustrated Red Wings fans have been to get 1 point in a long time.
Hey, but isn't it great though? They're still right atop the division, and we're still complaining. So that means it's a good season and the team's playing well.
For sure. All right. Well, before we get to our second half of the show, we're going to talk a bit about that. Got to pay the bills and remind you of the Red Wings Substack we got here at the Hockey Writers. Lots of good stuff there. You get your free, 2-3 times a week. You get all the best articles of the Red Wings at thehockeywriters.com. You also get into your inbox, and you also have option for premium Substack, which gets you a lot of features. Like I said, not just the Red Wings. You have access to all the teams, history, the THW Daily, a whole bunch of different things, fun stuff in the premium Substack. Lots of good features coming out. So make sure you're checking that out in the link below. All right, well, let's get to our second half and talk about the Red Wings from last season to this season. Now, we all know what happened last season. They were really good to start, tailed off. Basically not just tailed off. They crashed and burned. They, completely didn't play very well, didn't make the playoffs again. This season, it's similar. I mean, they're starting off this season really well. we're looking good. We talked about the struggles and stuff like that, but Evan, we'll start with you here. How is this year's team different? Are they different? I mean, are they the same? We're going to see the same thing happening for the rest of this season here.
Well, like I mentioned, man, they are at 96 goals through 25 games. So offense is, I mean, we also have to look at the fact that it was a complete roster overhaul with all these new additions. And now you're throwing Kane into the mix, DeBrincat, Sprong. The whole team dynamic has changed offensively, and it's really shown. I mean, they are tickling the twine more than an Elmo doll, and it's really good to see. I honestly did not expect this much output from DeBrincat. At his rate, he's an amazing player. I don't think I ever watched enough of him. I always knew he was and kind of numbers he did, but I never watched enough of him in Chicago or even in Ottawa at all. But man, he's a player, and the Red Wings did very well on getting him, and he's added an offensive dynamic that we haven't had in a long time. So, yeah, I mean, I obviously, last year we were getting still in a playoff spot after the new year, but yeah, things went south. But I don't see it with this team. But again, as we're beating this horse, there's a problem with the goaltending and the defense, and it has to be addressed. I mean, defensively, heck, they played better defensively last year. They didn't have these kind of meltdowns last year. I mean, how many meltdowns have we already had this season? We're talking 5 or 6, 3 in the last week. The Sweden series. It's concerning. And the one thing I wanted to point out too is that, as bad as last night's game was, if that was the game that, hammered home the fact that Alex Lyon needs to be our starter the rest of the way, maybe not the rest of the way, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if he's the guy we're going to go with, that I think that might have hammered the fact home last night. And also, if that's the game that Steve Yzerman, phones down to Newsy and says, "Hey, I need Simon. I need him up here." So I mean, at this point, it's frustrating to watch because I think we've seen a big enough sample size of what Husso can do, and it's not getting done there. It's just not getting done. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the next couple of weeks. I honestly expected to wake up to a tweet this morning that said Edvinsson get called up. I always look for that. I'm like a kid on Christmas when I open my phone in the morning. But yeah, I mean, I would say the team's way better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just for reference, at this point last season on December 8th, when we're recording, they just lost. They're 13-8-5 at this time last season.
So
and hopefully it doesn't happen the same way. They started this loss. They lost the Florida Panthers 5-1, started a 6-game losing streak. So hopefully that this last loss was the start of that. But yeah, they're pretty similar on record. So 13-8-5, they are right now 14-7-4. So
like the exact same thing.
Pretty much the same. So Devin, are they a different team from that one that from last season?
I mean, I knew that, like, they're in a similar spot. I didn't realize it was that similar. Holy cow. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely different. Like Evan said, they are better. They're a much more entertaining product to watch at the very least. And they are able to outscore their problems on a lot of nights. There are a lot more of a high octane group this year. And a high octane group that needs to work on defense, whereas last year they were a pretty decent defensive team that needed to figure out how to put the puck in the back of the net. It's interesting to me. I kind of I'm still a little skeptical on them. Don't get me wrong. I'm still, I'm here for their improvements, and I think that there's a lot of numbers that will tell you that they're in a better spot this year than they were last year. But I tend to think that teams that are better defensively are going to fare better over over a long period of time, rather than teams that can run and gun. What's that old phrase? Defense wins championships, right? When the Red Wings are, when when the calendar flips to 2024 and like the playoffs are actually like a legitimate thing to start talking about, and the Red Wings are playing against, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs and the Panthers on a regular basis as their schedule starts to ramp up. Can they continue to rely on scoring 5 goals a night? I don't know if they can. I think they're going to have to figure out how to defend and protect their leads. They can't protect the 4-goal lead against the San Jose Sharks. I'm scared of what they would look like if they had a 2-goal lead against the Bruins, right? I know they've beaten the Bruins every time they played them this year, but that's not the point. It's how they're playing. I think that they're how are they different? They can score, and that's very obvious and evident. And I think that at the very least, they should be interesting to watch even past the trade deadline. I wouldn't be surprised if they're still in the mix as the trade deadline comes and goes. But as things pick up, it's going to be interesting to see how they fare. If they can lock things down defensively and start to become more of a well-rounded team and stop giving those odd man rushes and maybe inject some more talent into their roster. And yeah, let's go. Let's get ready for playoffs at Little Caesars Arena. But if not, I'm thinking that they're going to start looking like that team from last year that looked really, really good and then came back down to earth in a big way. One last little thing I want to throw out there is that they still have the second best goal differential in their division, which also means that they have the second best goal differential in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big stat. I think that tells you that they're playing good hockey on a regular basis. And even the fact that they got 5 out of 6 points just out of this past week, I think shows that they're still playing good hockey. The biggest thing for them is going to be whether or not they can figure things out on their own end.
2 big spots. I mean, like you say, the defense and goaltending. I mean, goaltending maybe can be fixed if the line can get in there and so he can do some stuff, but get on a roll of it. But yeah, I don't think it will matter who's in goal if they can't fix that defense or play better defensively. That's going to be a big part for the rest of the season for sure. All right, let's do our last part of the show here, and since we're getting close to Christmas, let's talk about a gift that keeps on giving for this first bit of the season. Evan, I'll start with you. Who or what is a gift that just keeps on giving this for the Red Wings this season that hasn't stopped yet?
I think it's got to be the improved play of Lucas Raymond. I mean, he's starting to look more like the point per game player that we expected. He's all over the place, and I really like him as a player. And we gotta remember this is a kid. He's 21 years old, or he might even be 20. I think he's the real deal, and I've said this before on the show. I think Yzerman's gonna have to pay up, and I'm very interested to see what his contract details end up to be, because he's the guy I would want to lock up long term. He is a definite. I think he's going to hit 30 goals this year. I think that's a given right now.
Yeah.
And again, he's young. Hopefully, he just progresses and progresses. He seems like the kind of player that this organization loves. To me, he seems like a very quiet, relaxed guy. He never really says much. But everything I've read and heard about his work ethic, his play, he's a pretty good player, and I'm actually really glad about how that draft that year that panned out with us not getting the #1 pick, because we got a good guy there.
It's looking good so far, that's for sure. All right, Devin, who or what is a gift that has kept on giving this season so far?
Evan actually referenced it for a hot second early on in the episode. I'm going to go with the Red Wings goal song, actually.
Yeah.
I think exactly, right? Like it is probably one of the best additions to this team. Aside from DeBrincat, aside from Patrick Kane, you got to that just adds to the team's personality. It adds to the home ice advantage at Little Caesars Arena. And it is also kind of funny now that Patrick Kane's on the team. He goes from a team that has Chelsea Dagger as their their song, and it's known for being really annoying for the opposition. And now he's playing for the Red Wings, who have na 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 every time they score. It's great. I'm very excited to go to a game at Little Caesars Arena so I can experience that in person because yeah, that's a top tier edition in my
Yeah. I think I said it I think it was the first episode of this season. For this season, I said that I love that goal song.
I love it.
It can be really annoying for the opposition, that's for sure. All right, mine is going to be Alex DeBrincat. He's been everything that the Red Wings hoped they were getting when they traded for him. Fit in almost immediately on the team, and just looks like he's supposed to be here. So that's been a big part of their offense so far. He's ignited. I don't know if he's ignited Dylan Larkin, but Larkin's looked really good this season alongside him. We'll see if Kane and him play together for the most part of the rest of the season. But it's going to be fun to see what else he can do for the rest of this season. Yeah, his pace went down, but we were expecting it. I mean, he wasn't going to score at that pace all season long, but he still remained quite consistent in his goal scoring. So I think he's just kept on, that gift has kept on giving so far for sure. All right. Well, let's do a quick off the rush. We're getting to the end of the show here. Evan, we'll go with you for your question. Let's go.
Well, what I want out of you guys is a prediction, and then we'll see who's right and who's wrong later, and I'll send you a gift card. The question is, by what date do you think Simon Edvinsson is brought up? In and around?
Oh, I'm going to say it's going to be I'm going to say beginning first week of February.
Right before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's like the first thing that came to mind was like February, whether
Yeah.
it's like right before or right after the deadline. But I'm going to be optimistic. I think Edvinsson's been really good recently in Grand Rapids. I think there's the defense in Detroit has been bad enough that I think there's some momentum to where, maybe one more bad defensive game, maybe Eisman pulls the trigger. So I'll say we get through 2023 without him being called up, but I will say like the second week of January he gets the call up.
Okay. This isn't like The Price is Right. If you go over,
$1, Bob.
Starbucks gift card coming somebody's way.
We'll see who's right. All right, Devin, quickly, your question.
So last night in Patrick Kane's first game, he skated on a line with Alex DeBrincat, go figure, and Joe Veleno. And the reason why Veleno was there is because JT Compher was out. He is currently day-to-day with an injury. We expect he'll be back pretty soon. My question for both of you is kind of a two-parter. One, when Compher returns, do you put him in that spot between Kane and DeBrincat? And if so, what do you do with Veleno? And then the other part of it is basically, do you not do that? And then where do you put Compher if you're keeping Veleno in that spot?
Yeah, that's a tough one because Veleno looked pretty good with them. So I mean, and Veleno's looked really good so far this season. So and Compher's looked. We talked about him last episode how good he's looked too. I'd put Compher back there. I want to see how he can play between them. But Veleno, I don't really want to put him back in the bottom six, but that's where I'd put him because I don't know if we're going to the top line. So I put Veleno back to the bottom six, but whatever, he's looked good there too. So yeah, Compher between them.
Well, what about you, Evan?
I definitely concur. And I think I would put Veleno, down in the bottom six. Like I said, man, I said it last week too. I got to eat some crow on Robbie Fabry. He's, I don't know, but we all know he's one hit away from a bad injury. So I think they move Veleno down. I think, and they go with Larkin, Raymond, and Fabry on the top line. Veleno's he's just not consistent enough. You don't know what you're going to get out of him every night. There's nights where he looks great. So there's other nights where you don't notice him. The way Fabry's scoring, you can't really pull him out. So I agree with you. I'd like to see Compher with Kane and DeBrincat because you got a defensive a 200-foot player in between them. Patrick Kane is not known for his defense. The Red Wings did not sign him to play defense for us. So I think that's right for the second line.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Kane kind of meshes and see how they're what center's best for him in the long run. But yeah, that's an interesting question, Devin, for sure. All right, my question quickly is on Husso. Evan, I'll start with you. Would you send Husso to the AHL and put him on waivers? I don't think anyone picks him up, but would you do that to maybe get his game back in the AHL with Grand Rapids? Although that would also screw up the goaltending down there. So what'd you do?
Like I said, shirtless Ozzy, put him in net. I would, I was actually thinking about this today, so I'm glad you brought that up. Husso would Husso, I said Hossa. Husso would probably pass through waivers. I can't see someone picking up that contract. Maybe Edmonton does, there you go. But it's kind of a weird game right now that they're playing that I honestly think that Husso's going to take a break. I think he's mentally beat up, and I think they're going to go with Lyon for a while here, and maybe even Reimer backs up. But it all depends. They're still carrying these three goalies. It's still too weird. I feel like we're going to see a little bit after the new year in February about what their real plan is. Hopefully they're still in contention at that point. But Husso, he's lost it. If you count for qualifying goaltenders, he ranks like 43rd overall. Alex Lyon, while his numbers don't qualify, ranks second overall. And that's with 5 games played. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. But right now, I think, he might get picked up on waivers, and that might be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm convinced that they're going to hold his three goalies for a little bit here longer.
All right, Devin, what do you think?
Well, as somebody who, watched Alex Nedeljkovic play a couple games in Grand Rapids last year, I think that there's some merits to the idea, right? I think that when Nedeljkovic came back at the end of last season and actually looked pretty good in Detroit, I think that had to do with him getting steady workload in Grand Rapids and maybe rebuilding a little bit of confidence. But I don't know. Kind of like Evan said, I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards. I think that they still, Eisenman said just recently, last week when he was talking about the Kane signing, that he still anticipates carrying 3 goalies for the time being, and then making a decision if it comes to it. But what would I do? I would keep him as the backup for right now. I do agree that something's not quite right there, and maybe you have to, like I said, give him a sabbatical for a little bit. Let him spend some time with his newborn, do whatever he's got to do to get his head right, because it's clearly not right now. And I kind of wonder, if you're putting him in the AHL, what that would potentially do to his psyche. And,
True.
there's depending on how you take that, that's an interesting thing. I do think he would pass through waivers. If they wanted to go that route, I have a hard time believing anybody would claim him. And the only teams that could afford to claim him would be like the Chicagos of the world. And I don't think they're necessarily, eager to do that. So if they wanted to go that route, I think they could get away with it. They did it last year with Ned. I don't think it's necessarily at that point yet. But I will say that I think that's a lot more likely today than it would have been if you asked me this question 2 weeks ago.
Especially after that game. I don't know. I would. What my thing is that what it does to the goaltending in Grand Rapids, Kosa's getting some good starts down there. His numbers don't look the best, but he's getting starts, and I don't know how that would do with it. Husso being down there. So I don't know. Well, we'll see what happens. I probably wouldn't do it at this point, but yeah.
I think one of the biggest cliches in hockey, or when we talk hockey talk, is going with the hot hand. And when you have a hot goaltender, you ride them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, isn't that just like basic knowledge in the world of hockey? And
Yeah.
right now, line's hot,
Yeah.
and Husso's not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I'm not lying, but it's time to see what we got out of Alex Lyon, because Husso hasn't improved it enough. It's just not working. So let's ride Lyon for a bit. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It really does seem like they're like almost too committed to the tandem
Yeah.
idea. At some point, like you said, you got a hot goalie, you ride him, you don't let him sit on the bench.
Yeah. Well, Lyon did this last season with the Panthers, high-end goaltender, and he was the starter over Bobrovsky, who was making $10 million.
Well, if you add last year and combine this year with his numbers, he played. It's still a small sample size this year, but he played 9 games last year down that stretch that really got them into the playoffs, and he's played 5 games this year. So you're looking at close to a 15-game sample size.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for that. That's a pretty good sample size over 2 seasons. Yeah. I almost, like you say, I think Lyon deserves to have the net for a bit as the starter. So we'll see what happens. All right. Before we end the show, Evan, we've got a great prayer that courtesy of Paradox Destroyer, who has been, hi Paradox, thanks for your comments and for your support since the beginning of this show. So Evan, take it away.
Well, as you saw last week, if you were watching, we're very all together on this about praying for Patrick Kane's hip, and especially after his performance last night. I mean, what he hit 2 posts. Another one was a great stick save off Blackwood made. He looked pretty good, guys. He looked pretty good. So what we want to do is we want to pray to the hip god. And we're going to read Paradox's tweet. He's going to get is it Paradox or Paradox?
Paradox.
Paradox. That was hilarious. So I want everybody here to bow their head in prayer as I read this. Obviously, I can't bow my head because I got to read. Dear hip gods, we come to you today in prayer for Patrick Kane. He's been working hard, chasing his dreams, and striving to reach his full potential. Thank you for showing mercy and strength through each of his struggles. Help him to have faith in the unknown and remain courageous in the face of adversity. May he seek your wisdom each step of the way. Amen.
Yes. Amen.
Gods.
Yes.
Gods.
Yeah. Thanks, Paradox, for that comment. That was pretty good.
We've officially done everything on this show.
All right. Well, on that note, make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. Red Wings related, hockey related. We got all that going on. We got the World Juniors coming up. Axel Sandin Pellikka is going to be prominent on Team Sweden. Also, Nate Danielson will probably make Team Canada. But Sandin Pellikka's already made Team Sweden. They already released their
Anton Johansson
roster,
too.
so.
Anton Johansson.
Johansson. Yeah.
Yeah. We got some. Of course, Team Sweden. I'm going to be watching for Red Wings fans. So we'll have a bit more on that in future episodes here once we get more clarity on the rest of the rosters. But Sandin Pellikka should have a pretty big role on Team Sweden, especially how he's played this season in the SHL. So make sure checking all that out. Yeah, for sure. Make sure checking all that out at thehockeywriters.com. We'll have World Juniors coverage throughout the tournament, so you'll be able to follow along, and make sure checking out that Substack. Red Wings Substack is, like I say, the free version. You're also getting the premium, which gets you access to everything at our Substack, not just the Red Wings. Check that out in the link below. But thanks, Evan. Thanks, Devin, for joining the Grind Line again. And we'll hopefully have another episode next week. We're talking about maybe some good defense and goaltending rather than the bad again. But until next time, we'll see you in another episode of The Grind Line.